We can dive right into the
Oh,
news
jeez.
for Virtual Recap EP007, finally. Twice delayed. Once because we were both kind of out of it, and then last week we kind of just didn't talk about it until like when we should have been recording. We're like, oh, we'll delay it another week, why not? Um, but yeah, so I guess we're looking at kind of like what's happened in the last month of VTubing, right, Hannah? Because that's how long it's been. And also in the last month, there has been a lot of news from all the major agencies. There's been a little bit happening in the indie space and the tier 2 space. And we also, because this is kind of, even though it's episode 7 of Virtual Recap, I think it's like podcast number 10 or 11 for us more generally.
I
Um,
think so.
and we
Yeah.
started at the start of this year. And it's been about 6 months. So we're going to have a look back at all the kind of topics that we have enjoyed covering, and some of the things that, like, we covered earlier that are actually now coming up, and really just highlight like how far things have come in 6 months because a lot has changed.
The world is a very different place.
Yeah. Should we start with Hololive?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Let's start with Hololive. So, unless you've been living under a rock in the VTubing space, you're probably cognizant of the fact that Hololive EN Gen 3 has finally arrived. And it only came 23 months after Council's debut. So, almost 2 years since. It was funny when I
Was
was...
it exactly 23 months? Oh my god.
It wasn't like exactly like to the day, but Council debuted in August 2021. In like middle of August 2021, and Advent was end of July 2023. So basically 2 years between the
Oh,
two.
wow.
Biggest debuts in Hololive EN history, biggest debuts in EN VTubing history. The numbers on day one were high because they had the Hololive Summer event that then they raided into the debuts. So Shiori Novella and who else debuted? Oh, Bijo. Kosuke Bijo. They got like 125,000 peak viewers, which is mental. And then on day two, Narissa and the twins got like 100k off the top of my head, which makes them by far and away the biggest VTuber debuts in EN
Yep.
history, regardless of agency or independent. And I guess with that, the funny thing that we saw today was that the actual like teaser video, which like doesn't show any of like their faces, it's just like the eyes and stuff, and it's the start of the countdown, got more views than the actual launch video on Twitter, and like more engagement.
To be fair, there was a lot of speculation because people were just like, okay, like, let's talk about, like, what exactly could this mean? Like, who is this? Who's that? Who is this Paimon girl?
I think it came in with like the fact of like, sorry, I'm just trying to pull up a tweet of mine because I realized I didn't put it in my browser. There we are. Here we are. Here's some stats about the viewership. I think it just comes from the fact that there was just like so much hype around EN3, and then like by the
Yeah.
time they debuted, it's like people have kind of wiped it off the face of the earth, and it's like, okay, now that's old news. And that's the kind of thing with like reveals and debuts is like when you like do the reveal, and then it's like 48 hours until the debut, 48 hours until the full reveal, and then after that it's like 3 days until the debut. It's like people are gonna forget about it, or like the fatigue kind of sets in. But I mean, it's Hololive Gen 3. Like they've been teasing it for more than a month now because it was first teased at the end of the Connect the World concert at the start of July.
Yeah,
And
today would be exactly a month.
yeah,
So, several weeks by the time they actually debuted.
yeah. Um, and then yeah, the debuts went off pretty popularly. Like people really like the concept of the twin VTubers in Fuamoko, which is like for me, seeing the people say they were unique kind of annoyed me just like a tiny little bit. But hey, the designs they're pretty basic, and they get the appeal and they get the job done, and they've been super popular over the first kind of couple of weeks.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the things that they did well and some of the things that they didn't do as well, shall we?
Sure.
Like, it's definitely true that they definitely stayed a lot more safe on the designs. Like, I really like these designs. I understand that Council was a little bit more divisive and Myth was a little bit more, like, Myth is somewhere in between, right? So it's kind of like, on that front, they stayed as safe as they could be, which is okay. It's okay. Sometimes it's nice to have vanilla things. And the fact that they had twins, which in the indie space is like, it's not unheard of, but it's still pretty special. And then it's even more unique in the corporate space to actually have like 2 twin models. Like, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. In the same vein, though, like the twin models, while it's unique, did raise a lot of questions in terms of like, oh, how is the streaming going to work? Like, are they going to be on at the same time all the time? And so, I mean, Phil and Milko have come out and said, like, you know, they're going to be like mostly trying to stream together, but there will be a time where they'll have to like stream separately of each other. I think it's kind of cute how like the 2 designs play into each other, but on the on kind of like the design front, I'm gonna say it. Man, the designs were fucking boring. They were so safe.
Okay. I like the boring designs.
They were so...
I'm gonna come out and defend the boring designs.
They were so safe.
They are really safe. Like, they basically chose only artists who had actually worked on someone else before. And by someone else, I mean someone huge, right?
Yeah. It was all, like, a lot of them were actually returning Hololive artists, right?
I think so. The only exception might have been Sequoia Kana's mom, but she has a very distinctive, like, look and face.
Yeah.
Where, as soon as I saw her, I'm like, I know who your mama is, and this is so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, it basically was, like, first off, the name itself was just like, oh, like, there's a goofiness from HoloX, right?
Yeah.
Where HoloX is supposed to be this, like, edgy, cool group, and then you actually meet them, and you're like, you guys are a bunch of goofballs, and this is adorable.
Yeah.
That was basically Holo Advent. Because every, like, I don't think they noticed it in Japan, but they definitely knew about the wordplay, because, like, every English speaker was just like, Advent? In July?
Yeah, I mean...
We're like, what? Are we gonna get 24 days of chocolates?
It's more like it plays into, like, the more, like, oh, these guys are, like, made up to be, like, hardened criminals and stuff. Like, the whole thing is that they're, like, they're fugitives on the run, right? The name doesn't really play into it, the lore kind of does. And then, like, one of them is just, like, an absolute raging lesbian who cannot control, like, the fact that she's in Hololive and is, like, gushing up to all of these people she's idolized, which, shout out Narissa. She's been fucking awesome to watch so far. But...
And then to, like, counterbalance her, you have, like, Shiori.
Yeah. But the reason why I say it's safe and why I don't like it is, like, at least with, like, Holo... Like, I look back at the last Holo debuts. So the last Holo debuts were Holo X, ID Gen 3, which ID Gen 3 was the last Hololive debut that wasn't Stars, and that was more than 12 months ago. Which is kind of wild to think about. And then Council before that. And it's like, Council has, like, a very interesting theme with, like, a kind, like, coherent design between them, even if everyone looks so distinctly different. There's, like, it's bright, it's colorful, it's eye-catching, it's got unique silhouettes. It's very well marketed in that way. HoloX has the same thing, where they've got a couple of out there designs, like Laplace's, and like Koyori's a little bit more like on the safer side, and Louis more on the safer side, but they've still got their interesting marks to it. And then Holo Advent is just, sorry, I forgot ID Gen 3. ID Gen 3 has Kobo. I think that's enough said. And then like, but I see what I see in Advent is a lot of kind of the same same monochrome colors with kind of highlights. It's very clean, which doesn't tie into the lore for me. Everyone kind of has the same dress style. There's no like unique dress style among them. It's kind of, I don't know. And the one thing that I always bring up is like, there's no like unique silhouette thing. Like there's like, you could line them up and there'll be a dime a dozen VTuber. Like there was the memes about VSHOJO's design being very similar to an indie VTuber's, and the memes being made about that in the lead up to her debut. And that was even before they were actually, VSHOJO's name was revealed. That was like off the basis of the 30-second teaser video. And so I look at that and I'm like, okay, there is a finite number of designs that you can do in VTubing, but this coming out of the biggest agency in the world, who usually has done pretty good on the design front and making unique silhouettes and characters, is actually quite disappointing.
Yeah, like, I'm gonna be frank. NIJISANJI usually does safer designs because JP for them has always been a lot more Twitch adjacent in the very, like, VTuber side of things, right? And this feels like first generation of ID, right? That was Risu, Muna and Eofi.
Yes.
Or like very, very early JP. Like, it's definitely on the safer side.
Yeah.
I don't hate these designs. I actually really like them, but I could tell the influence from every single one.
Yeah. So I'm gonna pull up a photo of the designs so that like people can see what we're talking about a little bit. Let's just go to the official website here. So like this is what they look like, and I get like it's like the black and white themes and everyone has like different accents, but it's like really. And I know that
every once in a while.
I know that NIJISANJI very much leans into the I'm a human and I got clothes out of my wardrobe kind of vibe, especially on the JP side, which is like cool. I mean, Holostars, especially Holostars JP is a little bit like that as well. Holostars EN is like a little bit more out there, especially Tempest Vanguard, so Tempest Gen 2 versus Tempest HQ. But yeah, I don't know. I do wonder what Advent will be in the long run, because there's obviously been a lot of talk around Council and how Council's impact in the long run hasn't been as impactful as Myths. And I think Council has still done a great job. I still think Council is made up of, I'm going to say 5 here, because Sana was really good while she was there. Like 4 really good content creators who lean very much into I'm the streamer vibe, which Myth doesn't. And that appeals to a different audience. I think Advent's almost like a halfway between the two, where you'll probably have someone like Narissa who might do the streaming side, but also focus on more of the musical side, kind of like a Bay. But then you've also got the guys who are like pure streamers versus and whatnot. But I don't know. I don't know how this is going to go in the long run. I think the designs are very safe, and I think they might struggle to stand out if they, designs matter in VTubing. As much as we hate to say it, they matter in VTubing. And if you don't have a distinguishable design, you'll write off the Hololive sledgehammer of hype, because that's inevitable. Like, they blow up to 100k instantly. But you won't like have that long-lasting impact in the space unless your skills are really, really up to scratch. Like, you don't have that immediate draw, and visuals are a big thing in VTubing. So I'm kind of on the fence about it all.
It's interesting because I think about, like, I mean, I'm gonna be frank, I actually think Holo Advent, as much as I watch Crisis more, I actually think Holo Advent had a larger overall impact in that it's less about the design and more that the choice to pick out twins was so interesting.
I mean, there has been so much. I mean, yeah, sure, they picked out twins and they've got like these duo VTubers, right? And like, not necessarily been done in an agency before, so yay, hooray. But everyone's treating it like it's the best thing since sliced bread. And I'm like, there is no shortage of Joy VTubers out there. You've got Joy Leveling, Yuka and Yuna, who have been streaming for like 3 years. You've got Flare and Umbre as Mythic Joy, who have been streaming for 4, 2 of those as VTubers. You've got Necro News with Ellen Booster, who have been going at it for 2 years. Like, they're not a new thing. And I get that, like, maybe in an agency it's kind of like a unique concept, but at the end of the day, it's just 2 streamers sharing the same account. Like, there's actually nothing special about it. And people saying it like, oh my god, Hololive is changing the industry, and like giving Hololive all the credit is like, nah. Like most things, the indies did it first.
Yeah, like, I always view the indies as kind of like the testing ground. So it's interesting that they've decided to pick this up. But it's also just like,
I wonder why.
I want to see where this... I want to see where it goes from now on. Because I think it's one of those things where it's, like, super interesting to start off with. So it's up to them to keep up the hype.
Yeah.
Because,
I mean,
like, they actually weren't the standout for me. I thought they would be.
I thought they were the weakest, if I'm gonna be real. Like, I think they were meant to be like the standout on design, and I think after streaming they've turned out to be like the weakest of the lot. They're still like insanely talented and have still got like good things going for them, but the other 3 members have definitely shone.
Yeah, for me, for different reasons, I think I like the other 3 a lot.
Yeah.
Because VSHOJO definitely seems like the standout in terms of like comedy.
Before we get any further, I will not want to ever touch VSHOJO's fan base with a 10-foot pole. Holy moly. Like, I get, like, she's so, like, I really like her, and I really like the content that she does, but, like, man, her fan base is gonna be so toxic. Like, it is, like, perfect, like, 4chan appeal material.
I actually think Fuamoko is a lot more 4chan appeal material.
I mean, the 2 of them are. The 2 of them are, but, like, I feel like VSHOJO, like... VSHOJO on, like, Reveal was definitely, like, more of it, but, like, Fuamoko in the long run will be that. Nevertheless, I will not want to touch either of their fan bases with a 10-foot pole.
VSHOJO reminds me a lot of Gura. Like, very, very early Gura, because I was one of, like, the big chumbuds in the beginning. She reminds me a lot of Gura.
Hannah was once a Hololive fan? Holy moly. I thought you hated Hololive.
It's like, people are like, wait, you like Hololive? And I'm like, yes?
How could you say this?
I stopped remembering I used to call them the Operation Trio, so it was Gura, Ina, and Amelia around month, like, 24? I think I got to the 2nd year patch before I was like, I haven't watched a stream from you guys in forever, and my Niji subs have started to cross the Oh! Speaking of remembering.
I was gonna say, like, the Gura membership thing is like, I haven't watched a Gura stream in months as well. It's probably because Gura hasn't streamed in months, but, like, you know.
Okay, this was back when she was streaming. In my defense, she was still streaming back then.
Yeah, I mean, now what? She comes out with a stream like every, like, 3 to 4 weeks, which is, like, fine, because she's doing a ton of stuff, like, outside of it. Also, Native, thank you so much for the 5 months.
Also, back then, it was really worth it, because, that was back when she was a lot healthier. And so she would actually do, like, a members-only karaoke stream, I want to say, like, every 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So, back then, there was, like, a very, very good argument to keeping Gura and Ina's, which is very ironic because Amelia is still my #1 favorite. So I was just like, wallpaper or members only karaoke, which one?
I guess the final question that I want to ask to leave it off, I'll get a new visual in the background. Do you think Advent has the chance to overtake Council? because that is kind of like the number one comparison people will draw, is like Myth was massive. Council still doesn't have a member at 1 mil. Can Advent like take over Council eventually?
Okay, so I want to preface this by strongly saying this is not Sana's fault, because her circumstances were completely out of her control, right? But unfortunately, having a member that kind of fell behind really, really early in the game kind of like hurt a lot. And it also didn't really help that their designs, while super unique, kind of didn't have that like appeal that would obviously appeal to the people who like safer visuals.
Yeah.
And so as a combination of all those factors, and not having someone as like super memeable as Advent, I think Advent's actually going to have a stronger long run. I mean, it's TBD on how fast this is gonna go, but it does say something that they're all at like 300k right now, which is like 300 to 400k, I want to say, is like, because for Hololive in general, everybody typically tends to start out with about 250k subs by the end of their debut. I think Advent
not in EN. The EN, like Council didn't start out with like 250k at the end of their debut. On the Japanese side, sure, but like EN side is more closer to 150k.
I actually want to say that, like, I think for Myth it was like 150. For Council it was 200 to 250. The highest of them was 250. Like, in terms of like just subs, right?
Yeah.
Not in terms of actual watches.
Yeah, because like
Advent, I think because of the smart tactic that they use between like the summer and everything, and the fact that Kobo brought in a new group, like basically a new country to look at them.
Yeah. This is why I think Kobo was one of the best VTubers last year, but like that's a debate for later. It's a debate we've had many times before.
It's the entire like, is breaking a country bigger, or is breaking an entirely new demographic across 5 countries bigger?
Yeah.
So it's like different categories.
I didn't realize they were so big already. Like Fuumoku just crossed 400k on YouTube.
Yeah. I think because of all those factors, Advent might surpass them soon. But the slowdown is real.
Yeah.
Right? People tend to slow down hard around the 500,000 mark. So we'll see. I think they still really have a lot of potential.
Yeah.
They chose well.
I think they will, just through the, like I like to call the Hololive sledgehammer of hype. Through that alone, I think they'll be able to ride that wave a bit more than Council did. Just due to like the nature of where they are debuting in terms of the cultural context of VTubing. Which means I think, sadly, because I think Council is, and I'm biased here, but I think Council is one of the strongest gens in...
You're biased.
in agency VTubing, period.
You're biased.
2 Aussies, okay? Like, give me a break. But like, I really think that Council hits a lot of nails on the head, and they just like it was like maybe, even though they're huge, it was like they could have been bigger if they were released in a different period. So
I definitely think there's that, but there's also the fact that like nothing immediately stood out. And that's kind of like the unfortunate part.
Yeah, like maybe that's like a little bit of it, but like I think as a streaming group, they're one of the best agency groups as pure streamers. Which is I think
a subjective matter.
it is but like I think it is like a strong point of them, much stronger than it was for Myth. And we'll wait to see whether like Advent has the same strength, because obviously they're going to be streaming like 50 times a week while they're in debut hype mode. So that one takes a little bit longer to assess.
I'm definitely like, if I have to choose all of the Hololive gens, I'm always going to be biased towards my Myth babies, right?
Yeah. I mean, I still think like one of the most impactful Hololive generations as of late is Tempest. Even if like they're not like big, like Tempest was like a huge moment for Hololive, and the fact that they got Tempest 2 out so quickly was kind of testament to the fact that they saw some success there and they saw some reason to have Tempest. And I mean, Tempest 2 gave them Bettle, who has been by far their most popular male talent, I think, across both EN and JP. So they're still waiting for the...
in terms of like
there's
super
still,
chats and stuff.
Yeah, there's still like some popular ones, like, right, like Roberto and all that, but like Bettle is like kind of now become the face of Holostars in a way. They're still waiting for like their Luxium moment. I don't think they'll ever get their Luxium moment, but like, you know, that's kind of, if they do get it, then it's like, okay, interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I'm on the fence about Advent. I think I mean, obviously Hololive needed to debut Holo EN 3. I just really wish it was something a little bit more.
Yeah, like, I mean, I think
the thing that I said on debut day was 2 years for this, or on reveal day was 2 years for this, and I still feel a little bit of that.
I wish I could be a lot more hype about it, because, like, as much as I would love to be more enthusiastic, the fact is, Fuamoko have been a little bit shady about, like, what their exact background is. For those of you who don't know, I am very American, so this means that I care extremely about the SJW aspect, right? And
America.
That means, yeah, basically America things. And it means that for me, I'm going to be really sensitive when someone emulates a certain type of accent that is not immediately identifiable. And it's not to say that, like, there can't be a series of circumstances that leads to them having an accent. But the fact that they're being so suspicious about it and not being very upfront about, like, oh, like, here's the reason why we're using this accent now, and those circumstances kind of all combined just makes me very, like, I wish
you're
I could
apprehensive.
Say,
yeah, you're
like,
apprehensive.
I am super apprehensive. It does not help that I've gotten a bunch of cryptic messages from all of my overseas idol friends about this, being like, yeah, I don't know. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know?
Yeah. I know that, like, I want to kind of move on for Hololive, but I kind of want to touch on this because, like, now that, like, we've spoken about this came up on my feed, and it's, like, it's a memory of mine. I'm going to pull up the tweet. But basically, the tweet was from Kyo, who is a fellow news/drama VTuber. And he was saying that... Let me just pull it up so I can say it word for word. Past. Yeah, it won't come up because I've muted him on Twitter. There we are.
For good reason.
Yeah, I have my reasons. But like he came out on before, like after the reveal before the debut of Advent, and said, "So I guess it's okay to talk about past life stuff now. We can finally do that because we're not going to sugarcoat it. There was a lot of past life discussion around Holo Advent." Like there has been past life discussion around literally every other debut, but like, you know, apparently because it's Hololive, people now have to kind of, you know, tiptoe their way around it because it's precious little Hololive. This treat angered me so much. I have no I have no words for how much this angered me. Because
absolutely fucking not. Just no. I'm sorry, you're probably gonna get demonetized on YouTube because I'm going to drop that F-bomb like 15 times now.
That's fine, I'm Australian.
That's true. Like, Absolutely fucking not. A lot. Okay, so putting aside the people who just want to get into corporate because they want to get into corporate, there is not an insubstantial number of people who debut as VTubers for various reasons, and half of those reasons usually have to do with like resetting their career in some way, shape, or form, right? And out of respect for those people, we should just never talk about their past lives, right? And
my thing is like, I think it's fine to have past life discussion privately.
yes,
Like, I think it's totally fine if you're chatting with friends and you're chatting between yourselves, because put myself on the spot here, I do it all the time. Like, in my Discord, I will be talking about it, but I will never publish an article with it. I'd never talk about it on a podcast. I'd never put out a tweet about it unless the VTuber involved themselves comes out and says, yo, this is me. Which doesn't happen in Hololive, but has happened before in other, like, situations. Looks at Zion.
Yeah, and quite frankly, like, even if they did say, oh, hey, this is me, I would still check with them. Like, this is actually a topic that came up. So somebody that we know is actually doing a pretty comprehensive article on VTubers overall. And there was a part where I basically said, hey, like, if you want to publish what I'm going to say right now, you can't just go off of her statements that it's okay to talk about this. You should literally go up to the talent and be like, are you sure you would like me to say this? Right? Because, like, in different circumstances, they're going to feel very differently, right? Like, how they might feel on, say,
Alright. I don't know where you've gone, by the way. I'm not sure if you're muted or not.
Oh!
Yeah.
No! No, I think my computer crashed.
Oh, I lost my co-host. No. It's alright. She'll be back soon. But, to continue the discussion, because I can say it myself. Yeah, Discord crashed. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Oh, you back? Is she back?
I'm back!
Welcome back. You got up to the example bit.
Hello?
Hello.
Oh! Yeah! Hello, I'm back.
Welcome back.
Discord, why? But yeah. Wait, so where was I?
You got up to like the example bit where you're gonna relay an example.
Oh yeah, so I think with this particular person, they've made it pretty clear who they were in the past, right? And who they are presently. But I basically was just like, hey, it doesn't matter that you've said this like 100 million times. You still need to make sure that she's okay with you publishing this here.
There is only 2 VTubers in a ex-agency capacity that I will just name in articles as that ex-VTuber. Like, because it is so blatantly clear and so blatantly out there. The first is Rushia, because that entire saga is so intertwined that, like,
yeah,
you can't not. And the second is Zion. Because, I mean, Sayu just came out and said it.
Yeah.
Like...
And it also helps that they're just like, yeah, this is us. It is totally okay, right?
Oh, maybe not totally okay if you're in the case of Zion, but in my opinion, Zion lost any kind of respect to have that kind of dissociation. So, I will be a little bit petty. Because...
That's true. It's just kind of like, outside of those two, and even if I were to write about those two, to be quite frank, I probably would still check with them.
It has to be in context. Like, it would be like...
Yeah.
I would write an article about Mikaneke now, or Nazano now, and I would not have to draw on past life unless it was required. Like, unless it was, like, not going to make sense for the article. The same goes for if I was to write about Sayu now, right? There is, like, a couple of other examples that are very prominent that, like, I don't even do. I mean, the one that a lot of people do that I don't is Kason. Because they're still, like...
Even then, I'm very iffy about Kason because there have been times where people will come to her streams and they'll hint. They won't even say it. They'll hint at her previous life, and she'll literally be like, "Do not talk about this on stream."
Yeah,
and I'm just like, "Yeah." Then I'm gonna have to check with you.
Yeah, and like she's been very open about like, yeah, I was. Don't tie me to it nowadays. And like, people, it's been 2 years. Like,
yeah, like let's let go of the past. It's been 2 years.
Like, which by the way, saying it's been 2 years since her graduation is like, holy shit.
Wow.
But like past life stuff for me, you've never not been able to talk about past lives. You've never not been able to. Like you could always talk about past lives. Look at what Depressed Nusugi did. Right? And Depressed Nusugi was hailed as like one of the better VTuber content creators for the better part of 2 years. At least on YouTube by his fans. And then he did some very dumb shit. Got rightfully called out for it. Pushed off the internet for 48 hours and then came back. Whatever, that's a whole another thing. But his content thrived off past life content. His content thrived even further on traumatic past life content. Past life content that good creators definitely wouldn't have been comfortable with sharing outside of context. And I think there's a real issue with that. And I take issue to the fact that people welcomed him with open arms. But that's a whole nother debate. But there's never been an issue with talking about past lives. You've never been banned from talking about past lives. The thing is your actions have consequences. If you talk about past lives and you keep rubbing it in and you keep doing the hint, hint, wink, wink, oh yeah, this person, X person is Y, you're not going to get opportunities. You're not going to get the access. You're not going to potentially get the content that you want to make. There's a potential for backlash and being, I guess, ostracized from the community. I mean, I look at what happened to Luxium, kind of, and how a lot of that played out. So yeah, like when people say, oh, it's okay to talk about past lives now, it's like, well, I mean, it's never not been like banned, but like still use your judgment and don't be an asshole about it.
I think it's really important that the person who should be dictating the terms of how we discuss past life should always only be the talent. Like, one of the things that you guys might have noticed about how Ducky and I are talking about this is that when we say you might be able to talk about past lives, we're always saying reference the talent first. Because they re-debuted for a reason, right? Yeah.
Like, there is, like, I'm not even going to lie about it. Like, there's a written article out there with, like, when VSHOJO Japan debuted, right? Like, where I tied it to the 2 past lives. Because, like, it's so blatantly obvious. Like, so, like, you know, I'm no patron saint and being like, oh, no past life discussion ever. It's like, no, use your judgment. Like, past life discussion. Like, all right, let's do this. Past life discussion in the case of Hololive Advent is totally unnecessary. Until something, and that's even with the twins. Like, and that's even with the twins. But, and like us saying that kind of just, you can find it out yourself, is not necessary whatsoever. There is no reason to. What have they, what's happened? Like, nothing. Have they done anything? No. Like, it's just like, there's no reason to be bringing up past lives. It's okay to talk about past lives if you want to go and privately do it and go and check out their previous content and see if you're going to like them in the long run. Or if you really like them now and you want to see what they've done previously, go wild. Like, it's still, a lot of that's still out there. But there is no reason for VTuber commentators, VTuber news people, VTuber drama tubers to be bringing up past life content.
Like, ever. I just don't understand why it's even necessary. And quite frankly, this tweet really frustrated me. It
goes to show that they don't have original content. But, like, you know, that's my take on it.
There's that, but there's also just the fact that, like, they can't even speak on stream yet. Why the fuck are you talking about this right now?
Yeah. Yeah. It was even teased, like, it was even, like, quote-unquote leaked before, like,
I don't care
their,
that
like,
it was
names were
leaked.
announced.
Yeah, like, I could have literally had an entire list of their names, their autobiographies, their entire, like, life trajectory until now, and I would still pretend to be completely oblivious.
You could give that information to Depressed Nusugi, though, and he'd, like, make a banging video out of it. That will definitely
Oh,
not...
God.
I mean, that's what he did for Myth, right? So...
Like, even when Myth came out, I mean, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I may or may not have seen Myth at certain American conventions before they debuted as Myth, and, like, I may have talked to some of them. But putting all that aside, like, it's just one of those things where if somebody chooses to take this sort of, like, new step in their career, I feel like giving them, like, even 4 weeks of, you know, being their new selves might be great.
Yeah. Just let them create, please. There's no reason to be bringing up past life content in a public forum. Unless you, like... I think it's fine to ask the question, and I think it's fine to answer it. Just don't, like, there's no reason for it to be in content. That's kind of my take on it.
Yeah. Like, unless they themselves explicitly reference it somewhere.
Yeah.
And even with explicit references, it is completely unnecessary to talk about within, like, kind of like a news or what's going on kind of context, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, so Tempest Vanguard, I really like all 4 of them. One of them gave a dead hint to who he was before in his debut. And I'm still not going to talk about who he is, even though, like, that was very, very clearly meant for fans, right? Like, fans of his previous content.
And I mean,
And
one of HQ also did it.
One of HQ also did it, but, like, I immediately recognize one of the Vanguard ones, because I was a very, very diehard fan. And I was like, you're back.
Yeah.
This made Hannah a very, very happy person.
Actually, it was probably two of HQ. Not just one. One definitely.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's pedantics. I think we can move on. We want to talk about people moving on to new lives and it not like chasing after them. We can talk about Mister's graduation, I guess. It's the perfect segue,
gosh.
Hannah. It's the perfect segue. You can keep talking about it, but you can cry over Yoroshi.
Oh no. Actual depression.
Yeah. Also, like, just like this tweet from like saying like Callie's worried about collabing with indies because it might ruin their chances of going in Holo was something that I kind of wanted to discuss, but like we've talking about so much Holo already that I'm going to move on for it. But it's a kind of interesting tweet, so suss it out in your own time. Anyways,
it's interesting also because management explicitly told her that it would not actually impact anyone's chances. And like as far as I've known, it definitely has not affected anyone's chances.
Yeah.
But anyways. Oh,
do you want to talk about your favorite Brit?
Soon to be like past tense favorite Brit, right? Anyways, Mysta announced graduation. This is very sad. This led to... It was really funny because, like, a ton of people were doing lots of speculations on why he graduated. And I'm like, guys, you really don't need to speculate. This fucking Mysta Rias that we're talking about. He is called Mr. Holland by his fandom for a reason. That is to say, like, he literally has never been able to keep secrets.
No.
For as long as I have watched him, he has given away so many things, like new outfit reveals, like literally intricacies of their contracts. Yes, that is actually his nickname. His nickname is Mr. Holland. one of his many, many, many nicknames by the fandom. But like, there is no reason to speculate when he is saying things outright. And if you were to speculate, because of a lot of the things that have happened to him in the past, if there are issues that he cannot talk about, there is no way in fucking hell that anyone would be able to guess them. Just because, like, and it's one of the things that I've been toying with writing an op-ed for. Like, kind of the outsized hate that Luxium got, meant there was a lot of struggles in the first 6 months, which I think a lot of the fandom has kind of forgotten. Either that or like they came after, because it's like
I feel like it's almost it's a bit of column A, bit of column B, but I feel like it's mostly column B.
I think it's that it's kind of bizarre for me to realize this now, but like they were half the size that they are now, like last year in like July, August-ish.
Yeah.
A lot of the people who are writing about VTubers or talking about VTubers or drama tubers or whatever, they actually started around like May to July of last year, right? And really picked up steam like in October.
Well, that was because that was during the first, well, one of the first Vox quote unquote controversies was when people started paying attention in terms of covering Luxium. Like, I don't
even think it's just like Luxium. I think like just like news people in general, right? Because like I want to say VTuber news, I started seeing all of your articles like in May.
That's probably because I started writing them mostly. I started going hardcore in May, so
yeah. And then the Dexerto stuff started in like May, June-ish. Silicon Era didn't really pick up anything until they started doing a bunch of interviews, I want to say.
Yeah, with the whole
Tempest Vanguard, actually. So that was July.
Their stuff didn't pop off until... Well, Tempest Vanguard is later. Tempest Vanguard was December. Yeah. Tempest HQ was mid last year.
Yeah. So they started with HQ. They started with a bunch of interviews with HQ. And that was July. Penumbra doesn't start until October. So, like, a lot of the struggles of the first 6 months kind of got, like, forgotten. People basically don't remember it. And I'm just like... So, that's why whenever I see people being like, I wish we could go back to 2022, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
That was the struggle.
Yeah.
And, like... Don't even talk to me about, like, the 2 years before that, because that was even more of a struggle.
I don't think I've seen a group been so honest in a graduation moment. Actually, that's a slight lie.
We were like this for Nina, too. Right?
Yes.
As soon as Nina announced graduation, we all latched on to that one statement where she was just like, I felt like I was having constant imposter syndrome, and we were like, we know exactly what you're talking about. We're going to hunt down that freaking person. He's on circulating that stupid hate document. Yeah. And we'll find them. It'll be like a Taken moment.
I don't feel like I've seen like such like a level of like candidness about a graduation or termination. In Mista's case, a close second is like the reactions to Zion's termination earlier this year, in which they were candid in a different way. Brutally honest is probably the best way of putting it. But like, I don't think I've seen like a candidness of like discourse around, at least from the Luxium and the NIJISANJI folk, about like, Mista faced a ton of shit. Like, this guy took an absolute fucking beating online for months and still does to this day. And he was pretty blatant in saying he just couldn't take it, and it was like, it hurt him. And I think that like the streams, multiple streams, and multiple times Vox talked about it in the aftermath of Mista's graduation, really locked it in, where it was like, whenever someone would bring up Mr. Grad in his chat, Vox would go in and talk about, it's like, why is this a surprise to anyone? Because he's just been the fucking black sheep for forever. And just getting absolutely caned by people online for no reason. And so that level of candidness in a graduation was actually quite refreshing to me, and I think was quite interesting to see, because it does go to show that even though like Luxium had a massive cultural influence and had like a massive impact on VTubing as a whole in terms of opening it up to another entirely different demographic, it also highlights how that different demographic is treated compared to the traditional VTuber watcher, quote unquote.
It's also really funny because he was just like, oh, like, I've been getting a lot of sympathy because of the hate, but it wasn't just because of the hate, right? Yeah. And he was just like, I lived off of the hate. Nobody likes to hate, but, like, that's not the reason why.
Yeah.
It's also, like, one of the downsides of breaking into a new demographic is that this new demographic doesn't know how to act, right?
Yeah.
And to be quite frank, there were a lot of difficulties, particularly, I want to say, in the first 6 months, as to how people should act with regards to things like shipping. And you still see this now, right? Especially in the response to Shiori, like, some of the more disgusting shit that I called out.
Yeah.
People are still kind of, like, coming to terms with the fact that these are real people, right? And real people can draw up boundaries that fictional characters cannot.
Yeah.
And this meant a lot of people had, you know, opinions about, like, how these things should be voiced and what they should be voiced. And, like, unfortunately, it meant there was a lot of very, very unreasonable anger, particularly towards Mysta, because very early on, he was basically just like, I know you guys like shipping me with the other members of NIJISANJI. I don't like it because these are my friends.
Yeah.
Right? And this got him a lot of anger from some fans. I want to say part of it might have been because there are cultural boundaries,
shipping
but
culture.
that can't. Shipping culture, like, is kind of like
Shipping culture is a very interesting thing that I do want to analyze. So watch this space.
Like, I have friends who do research with it all the time, and as in, like, definitely it has its time and place, but we put on rules particularly for real people because we're dealing with real human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact is, particularly for some of the fans who were just getting into this, like maybe younger, just completely new to, like, streamer fan base, right? Because I was trying to do the calculations. And saying that, like, on a low estimate, you can probably guesstimate it at about, like, 5 million new people that Luxium brought into, Luxium and Noctix, because everyone always forgets Noctix, brought into, like, the VTuber fandom. But these are all real people. At the end of the day, like, if they're flirting with each other, fuck off, whatever. Like, that's cool. They can do whatever they want, but they are still real people and they are allowed to draw boundaries. And this was apparently a concept that some people found very difficult.
I think it was I think it was a concept people found difficult to this because it was, I mean, it's a whole thing of a male-dominated versus a female-dominated audience, right? It's like, all of the people, it's totally okay to ship Hololive Yuri couples, right? Because of things. That's a very complex Pandora's box to unlock. But the very simple way of looking at it was, it was totally okay to ship all these Yuri couples because, like, Yuri couples, like, appeal to a male-dominated audience for fetishization reasons. But no, we can't have it with the MLM. We can't have it with the MLM. You know, we can't. The women should not stay winning in that regard. They can't have their MLM relationships, which, like, is a very real thing, and it's something that we talk about extensively on this podcast, especially when we bring up NIJISANJI, because of NIJISANJI's female predominant audience, that they get away with less shit, or they cop more shit, because they cater to a different audience than what the traditional folk of the internet would want them to, or basically what the 4chaners would want them to. And that adds on to the pressure. And like Mysta spoke about that a little bit throughout the stream as well. Like, you know, there is like, this is something that he had been planning for a while. Like, it was like 5 months in planning. So like he was ready to graduate before Nina. But
yeah,
like that, and then like he ran out all of his commitments. And then like he mentioned that he's been like burnt out. He's like managed to process it all, and there was a lot of comments that came out during that stream and after from himself and other VTubers in NIJISANJI that really highlighted the VTubing audience's issue with content creators that do not cater to male audiences.
I'm gonna be blunt. I don't think. Oh,
sorry, I finally got Steppies from Firo. Let's go, Steppies from Firo. Woo!
Hello.
Hello, Firo.
Hello,
Welcome
hello.
in. I hope your stream was great. I'm guessing you're playing more kaiju games, or are you being a police officer? I don't know. What were you up
Steppies.
to? Ugh.
It's kind of funny because
Underground.
like...
Okay. Yes.
Underground. Let's go.
Continue, Hannah. Continue.
Oh yeah. So I think Mr. will never know this because us fans have been very, very like quiet about it, right?
Mm.
But we talk about this to each other a lot. And I don't think so. There was one moment where he was just like, I want to thank all the fans who have been here since day one, because he thought he owed us an apology and was like, guys are super strong for like staying with me this entire time. And I'm like, you definitely do not owe us an apology, but I appreciate that you're saying thank you, because he doesn't understand that just by being a fan of Luxium, we got harassed by other like VTuber fans. Like, I'll have friends who draw both NIJISANJI and Hololive art, and like
scandalous,
right? Scandalous, right?
Absolutely.
You can like both. What
no,
the fuck?
I don't believe you
and
can.
Like,
I don't think you can.
It's it's not even the fact that it's NIJISANJI and Hololive. It's the fact that they dare like Hololive the girls and like Luxium.
Yeah.
Right? And like Noctix. These fan artists will literally get shit for drawing NIJISANJI. Like, people will go into their mentions and be like, why are you like still drawing fan art for such a shitty company? Why do you still follow these people? And this is something that just happens constantly, right?
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where I think about my experience being there for the first couple of years of like Myth and then subsequently Lazulite, and comparing it to my experience now with Luxium, and I'm just like, why was the first one so much easier?
Yeah.
Like, even when you had people saying like, oh, like, look at these fucking upstarts with respect to Lazulite, it was so much easier to just be a fan of a VTuber girl.
Yeah.
Than to like Mysta, God forbid.
Yeah, how dare you, honestly. Why am I even friends with you? Jesus. Can't believe I do this to myself. My British Fox
is cool!
I have terrible taste, apparently. Terrible decision-making in friendships.
British boys!
But yeah, Mrs. Grad is like... We've spoken about it, like, in the terms of, like... Like, it was, like, an evident thing. Like, the way that he announced it was, like, a shock. But, like, it is, like, an evident thing. And it goes to show, I think, the reaction to Mr.'s Grad and, like, the difference in commentary around it versus, like, when a whole, like, Sana's grad, for example, night and day. Night and day. I love how, and this is me going to be ragging on VTuber commentary channels again. I love how basically none of the commentary channels reported on the fact that Mysta was directly calling them out, which I thought was hilarious. Like, there was no discussion from commentary channels about the circumstances of Mysta's graduation, the broader context of why Mysta's comments about drama tubing and the kind of culture that surrounded Luxium, especially in their early days, that was proliferated by commentators and drama tubers. And I just love how no one talked about it. I thought that was quite funny. That was a little aside that I noticed. The other thing that kind of comes out of Mysta's graph for me is like, holy fuck, ANYCOLOR fucked up with the colors AR live. Like, that is like one of the biggest mistakes they've ever made, was the announcement and the withdrawal of that live, because you can tell how much that affected the group based off of the graduations this year so far, of which there's been 2, and you know how much the morale and the vibe has changed since February. Like, it is insane how much of a chance and how much of an opportunity NIJI blew with colors. And I feel like you can look at like the Zion stuff. You can look at like the 2% split that people love talking about, right? Like, you can look at those things and like, sure, like it's like whatever. But the real they fucked up moment was colors. And that is the one that has impacted them the most.
Yeah, like, the fact is, okay, I get it. Like, I am more willing to buy the COVID story than most, I think. But you really couldn't get a backup animation crew, really?
Yeah. Yeah. It's ridiculous to me. Because they filmed parts of colors. They'd already done...
They filmed all of it.
Yeah, they had it already. Just don't indefinitely delay it. Just wait a little bit. Like, it does annoy me a little. Like, it annoys the livers a lot. I feel like colors isn't necessarily talked about a lot in when NIJI comes up this year. Everyone focuses on Zion. Everyone focuses on 2%. No one focuses on the event that NIJI very clearly fucked up on.
Yeah. No one talks about it because they don't watch.
They don't pay that much attention. Sorry, it wasn't Connect the World, guys. So, like, you know, we don't care. I don't know. I feel like this is like a perfect segue to then talk about the AGM that they just had last week, because ANYCOLOR, as a privately listed company, has their AGM.
Publicly.
Oh, sorry, yeah, publicly listed company. They always have AGMs, but now they publish everything. So we get to read all the documents, and we get to listen to the calls and figure out the answers of all the questions. And they talked about colors.
That they got grilled it. Yeah, they really got grilled about colors, which was great, because they should have been questioned on, like, why didn't you guys have a backup plan? This is so, like, it's extremely predictable that, you know, a bunch of people go out for a celebration party and, like, they would get sick.
Yeah.
How come you guys didn't have a fucking backup plan?
Yeah, and, like, the whiplash of it being cancelled 14 days after... Oh, no, it wasn't 14 days. It was 11 days after it being announced is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
The project...
Like, Alira literally broke down on stream.
That is a fire the project manager moment if I've ever seen one, to be honest.
Yeah. Like, Alira broke down. That absolutely killed Shu's motivation to stream. He's still recovering.
It killed, like, all of the musical people in... the especially big musical people in NIJI. It killed Pomu, it killed Ike, it killed a lot of them. Because this was the big thing that they were working towards.
Well, I would say Pomu took it better than most, because for her, she was just like, oh, like, this is just a delay. It's not it's not like forever, but I think it affected Etheria and Luxium particularly because
now they won't.
Realized.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no Nina and there's no Mysta.
You look back at when Mysta was like, yeah, this was like locked in 5 months ago. And you wind back the clock 5 months. What happened 5 months ago? Colors was cancelled.
Well, he had already started speaking to management about in January.
But that is still seen. It is still like probably the straw that broke the camel's back. Even if Mysta is not a muso, it's losing that experience.
Well, I don't think it was directly Colors, but Colors added to the bitterness. In that, like, that is the only time, that would have been the only time that Luxium would be 5 on stage.
Yeah.
In 3D.
Yeah. And now that's no longer the case.
Well, they could still possibly release it, just because I think, especially because Nina's channel is still up, and Mysta's channel is, like, going to still be up, there's probably still going to be a revenue share agreement.
God bless them. God bless the mistakes for getting Detect My Love to 5th on the Billboard on trending charts.
We got him cancelled by ARMY, even though he is one of ARMY. Yeah. Definitely, I am definitely not jealous of my Oshi. Nope.
Yep.
Man.
Yeah. But like some of the questions like that were brought up in like the AGM, and I've got like the article which Jay of VTuber News Drop so lovingly put together, based off like translations available online, was like they spoke about like expanding VTA, which has like been quite pertinent considering that like more than half of VTA just got absolutely cut this week. Like just completely wiped off the internet. They spoke about like the kind of balancing between supporting VTubers and then supporting their margin lines and their profit lines. The big one that went around was like the graduation comment where, and I'll pull up the tweet for it because that will probably do it better justice, where Ukitsuzumi was like, yeah, like sometimes grads happen. Where is it?
Which is like, okay. Honestly, a lot of people were being like, oh, like, how come you guys aren't preventing graduations? And I'm just like, bitch, you caused the reason for this.
Yeah, hold on.
Like,
this one. Yeah, so like, this is all based off a translation, by the way, and I can't speak Japanese or read Japanese, so I'm relying on the translation here provided. It's like, so the question was, considerable number of livers have graduated this year, because obviously it's not just EN, it's basically all of ID, minus a couple, and a couple on the JP side.
Well, it's 3 of ID out of like 10, I think, that are still there. There's one or two, I'm forgetting, JP, and then there's the 2 big EN ones.
3 if you count Zion's termination.
Oh yeah.
It's like, you know, it was that planned. It's like, the answer that Riku gave was a very corporate way of saying no, it wasn't planned.
Yeah.
Where he's like,
But it's also just like, it's so funny to hear these motherfuckers talk about graduations as if they have no part in it.
Yeah. Like, so like the quote from Riku was like, assuming that we exclude the cases of violations with compliance and controversy, graduation is the will of the livers who say they wish to pursue a life or career outside of VTubing, which is, Hannah and I, we talk about between ourselves, and we might eventually on podcasts before, we talk about the 1 year rule, where it's like, once you make it to 1 year, like a graduation after that is kind of like you're making your own destiny. But at the same time, that doesn't play, I don't think, that doesn't reveal the whole story in terms of the graduations of Nina and Mysta. And I think even if we look further back, I don't think that plays into the sudden graduation of Yugo. And then the second part is what makes us sad is that even though we were able to manifest their abilities as a VTuber, they decided to quit. In spite of that, we faithfully communicate with them, respect their decisions, and see them off. So you gave a very corporate answer of like, we didn't plan this. Like, none of this is planned. Yeah. We wish to keep them forever. But, you know, sometimes they leave for, you know, their own reasons. And doesn't draw too much introspection on why. The reasons as to why. Which is, again, kind of what you want to say in an AGM because you don't want to, like, scare off the investors. But at the same time, it's a bit of a weak answer.
Okay, so I'm going to be blunt. When it comes to ID, this is planned in that, like, they're clearly winding down the unit, right?
In the same way they've winded down KR, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they literally wound down KR before they integrated KR into JP.
Yep.
So that was planned, right? So it's kind of like, oh, okay, they're leaving because you are just dissolving this division, and you don't want to fire them, you're just letting them go on their own terms.
Is Ben Hutter, like, the last one?
No, there's a bunch of other KRs still there.
Okay.
So, Hyan, Nari, Duha, there's a bunch of KR still there, and they're probably gonna stay there long term because
if they've survived the cuts now, it's like, you know, if they like kept sticking it out, it's like they kind of like have a little bit more self-determination in that respect then.
And if anything, I would say the ones that stayed are actually like they're the ones that popped off after they got integrated, right? Yeah. With ID, it's a little bit harder because a lot more of the KRs just spoke Japanese. And that meant they could do a lot more with JP, right? Yeah. And quite frankly, if you're thinking about, you know, flying in between Seoul and Tokyo, that's only a 45-minute trip.
Yeah, it's not far.
So it's a lot easier to do things than for somebody from Indonesia, unfortunately. It's just like a matter of geography, right? Yeah. So with respect to ID and KR, I just expect people to like attrit over time, right? Yep. When it comes to EN, and when it comes to the one big JP grad this year, which is Gundo Mirai, it's a little bit more frustrating for people to not be a little bit more introspective on why those four left. Yeah. Because they literally left... Well, putting Mysta aside for a second, because he is adamant in saying that, like, hate had no part in it. For Nina and Yugo, they were absolutely affected by how the internet talked about them. Yeah. Right? There is a document that went around about both of them, just listing out any minor fault that either of them had would go into this Word document.
This just reminds me of like when there was like when after XLA debuted, and within a month there was already a 15-page document of all the shit things that Hex has done. And like, Hex did a couple of stupid things, but not 15 pages of a Google Doc worth.
Just like, every time he did something egregiously stupid, somebody took him aside and said, hey, like, think about this, and he would actually apologize for it. And it's just, like, why are people treating them like this? They are human beings. Like, we're talking about a real human being on the other side of the screen. Yeah. Have some compassion.
Yeah. But yeah, the one thing that, like, let's break down and focus in on a couple of the broader topics. One is VTA. Because we've spoken about the graduations now, we can now speak about VTA, because VTA terminated 13 VTubers this week. Just like that. Basically for violating the company's ANYCOLOR's like policies, mostly to do with leaks and info stuff. And now only 10 of them remain, because either the VTA students have like graduated and become like NIJISANJI livers, or they have been terminated and left. And there was 13 terminations off the top of my head. And this like comes at a very weird time for VTA, where just before this, like all of like the activities were cancelled, like until further notice, and then they came out with this announcement, and then people have been questioning whether like VTA has been like worth it. Obviously, like some of VTA's grads have become some of NIJISANJI JP's most like high growth VTubers, but it doesn't help the narrative that NIJISANJI has problems with InfoSec and general leak culture that actually has like bad impacts on the company as a whole.
Okay, I'm gonna be blunt. Like, part of that is definitely the Hololive versus NIJISANJI thing, because no one talked about the fact that the entire... Like, I actually didn't know this until somebody brought it up. No one talked about the fact that, the same person who leaked the Crisis designs before they debuted actually leaked the entire audition files for Hololive. For Stars. People just decided not to talk about it.
Yeah.
So, I think part of the perception is definitely because of this, very different treatment.
Yeah. I mean, it does loop back into like the discussion that we had earlier about how Hololive news is treated in the community versus NIJISANJI news because of the audiences that are involved. But yeah, that's all I really have to say to that. Like it's like there's not really much to add.
Yeah.
I still think VTA is like one of the smartest things like ever happened in VTubing, and I really hope that they expanded outside of JP eventually. I know that's probably not commercially viable right now, but if they do...
I think it's going to be difficult because apparently they do classes on top of everything.
Yeah, like it is like a 3-stage kind of process. So like I think VTA, it's going to be hard to expand into the West. I think if NIJISANJI finds a way to expand it into the West, it'll be lucrative. I think it'll be really, really good. But I think that's a bit of a pipe dream.
Yeah, like there's literally only one other country they could do this in, and that's South Korea. Because you have more than half the population literally living in like one city, and everyone can get to that city pretty easily.
Yep.
Even for China, it would be extremely difficult. You'd have to build it out into like 2 or 3 spots.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think like the other argument is you could open it up in Jakarta, but because I mean, half of Indonesia's population lives in Jakarta, so there's that as well. But that's a different market again, and if they're phasing out that market, then it doesn't make sense. I want to bring up what Lampy just said about like people treat NIJISANJI's faults more harshly, but it also feels like NIJISANJI biffs it more regularly. That's true to an extent. I think they publicly biff it more.
Do you think so? I actually don't.
But also they have way more talents. So like the kind of proportion of like biffs to VTubers is kind of equal, in my opinion. It's just that you don't hear about the shit that happens in Hololive. Yeah, I'll bite my tongue. Something happened. And I will bite my tongue.
Yeah, like, okay, so let me give you an example, right? Magni and Vesper are still on hiatus, for unspecified reasons, right?
Yeah.
Neither of them have voice packs currently available, which is yeah. My Tempest, HQ Oshi, and your Tempest,
you guys are just all losing your Oshis. Meanwhile, my Oshi is out here thriving. I don't know, like, what your issue is.
Like, so there's that. Yeah, don't curse yourself. You never know what tomorrow's gonna bring.
Okay, Mika, don't graduate. Please, I'm begging you, do not graduate.
But yeah, like, the way that we talked about that was completely different to any of the ways that we talked about any of the other screw-ups that NIJISANJI had.
Yeah.
And, like, were there other screw-ups? That was generally how it was treated, with, like, kid gloves. Either kid gloves, or you didn't talk about it at all, right? Like, the entire Hollow Tempest 3 audition leaks, when someone who will not be named leaked the entire files for what was supposed to be Tempest's Iris. No discussion of it.
And why don't we have Tempest 3? Question mark?
Well, that is a discussion for another time.
Yes. All I would say to that is, why do you think there were a couple of male VTubers who graduated and then all of a sudden came back after a couple of weeks? Just, that happened.
Yeah, that happened.
Yeah. I think the last thing in terms of, like, NIJISANJI's AGM that I want to talk about is, like, they kept professing the success of their anti-slander stuff. Which... Okay.
We definitely need to get into this one.
Which, I mean, NIJISANJI and Hololive have been tackling this individually for a couple of years now, but they announced a joint task force last year, and they have since expanded it to include a few other Japanese agencies, if I'm not mistaken. So it's like this whole, like, basically, like, anti-slander VTuber task force that extends across, like, I think it extends across a lot of Sony's VTuber groups as well. I think is the third player in this.
So I would actually say
Yep.
UUUM is actually their biggest win, because UUM does have VTubers under them, but it also includes a bunch of prominent, like, just like typical, more traditional YouTubers. And so the fact that they're joining forces together is a really, really big thing. But if you could pull up the Twitter thread.
This one?
That I sent you.
Yeah.
The K-pop one. So, okay. I'm gonna drag in K-pop into this yet again. Hi, guys. Because the main holdout for most slander cases tends to be the United States. In that, if a slander case wins in the United States or in the UK, it's going to win anywhere in the world, because we have the strongest protections on free speech. And so the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because HYBE managed to win a slam dunk case against several other talents on US soil. So basically, a US federal district court actually said, oh, hey, like, you guys can actually proceed with this. And, you know, you're totally allowed to, like, sue this dude's, like, earnings, blah, 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 into the ground and into oblivion.
Yeah.
Which, first off, makes me really happy. Second of all, for all those people who are just like, oh, like, you know, ANYCOLOR and Cover never do anything against slander. If you read the details of this case, they've been working on it since 2017. Right? Like, that is 6 years. It takes a really long time to build up and actually win any one of these cases. And it was only before the grace of God that they managed to get this district court judge on their side. By the way, ANYCOLOR, I know that one of the HYB directors is on your board, so I hope you guys join forces, please.
Yeah.
I have read the composition.
It does raise an interesting point, especially given Zion's termination. Which I think this tweet happened in between shows. If it didn't, then it happened just before the last episode. But Zion basically tweeted out something being like, yo, I never said that I was taking legal action. When Sayu in the document stated that they were talking to lawyers. So, like, you know, please make it make sense.
Well, I think she has foot and mouth syndrome.
I mean, yeah, she just needed to learn to shut the fuck up. But like, you know, if I live in a country where it is very easy to win defo cases. Australia's defamation law is very much towards the plaintiff. It is very hard to defend it. It's very hard to defend a defamation case here. Media companies get shafted all of the time.
No way. Like,
yeah.
in the US, the fact that that HYB actually won a case against an American, like, defendant is, like, unheard of. You never see this. That's why the Inquirer can get away with so much shit.
It's so common in Australia. It's like, it is so easy for plaintiffs to win defo cases in Australia. We have one of the, like, most plaintiff-friendly defamation laws in the world, which makes it harder to be a journalist here.
By the way, this is why False and Kyo are both Americans, and I can tell.
And then meanwhile, you've got me being like, well, because it's
okay.
Because technically I'm publishing I'm definitely publishing in Australia, so like I have to be extra conscious of things. No, I still like publish a bunch of shit. But like it is like a very real thing to like win. If you win a defo case in the US, it does actually have some impact.
Yeah. And
given that in the case of NIJISANJI especially, a lot of their defamation has become from outside of JP. If they have the resources to look at international, I guess, international cases of defamation and slander, then there is potential for a legal opening. It's just going to be harder to pursue because like it will be more costly with a lower guarantee of return versus if they open up a Japanese slander case. It's like basically case closed from the moment like they file, and they're guaranteed like $30,000 compensation, $50,000 compensation, like, you know, in USD that is. That being said, I'm interested to see the annual report of the task force and the amount of stuff they stopped this year. That's due in October, I think, was when
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it's like somewhere between September and November is when that comes. Oh, no, it's October or November because the reporting period ends September 31. That's when we'll kind of see like whether they're getting more cases, whether they're getting less. I also would appreciate if like future reporting broke it down by jurisdiction in terms of how many of them were defamation cases against in two ways. Jurisdiction one, how many were in Japan, how many were outside of Japan, and the second one is how many were towards EN livers versus JP livers versus ID versus the company as a whole. Like that kind of breakdown would be interesting. But I don't think that would happen.
Okay, so Mr. Holland strikes again. He's actually stated before that right now, just due to like capital constraints, they're mostly focusing not on cases against like individuals. So they wouldn't NIJISANJI, because we're talking about like a much smaller company. Wouldn't focus on these like the case that I'm showing here for K-pop is against a single person. What they're doing is they're going against platforms.
P2Y.
And so because of that, he's actually talked about how like they would definitely give him some tools to work against like people who are leveraging individual hate. But when it comes to general actions that their lawyers are like tasked with, they're tasked with going after these like much broader sites that are publishing all their fucking addresses and shit.
So where that goes in the next few years or in the next kind of this year, and what we see in the report in October or November kind of dictates how effective that is. And I mean, they won't stop doing it if it's ineffective, but you'll probably see like a change in how it's done. So yeah,
I will say for now, it looks like it's working, and it looks like it's working really well.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that you can actually tell is that discussions of particular VTubers like past lives have slowed down significantly. Which is how I know it's working.
I guess I can't speak for the Niji side too much of this. I guess it can come a little bit on the Holo side, but I also think that's just a case of the VTubers have been out for long enough that the discourse moves on.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of like that might just be a red herring. In it being like people just get over themselves after 12 months, 24 months, 3 years kind of deal. Because
well, as in
not to hit anyone with a little bit of like how old are you feeling, but Myth's 3rd year anniversary is next month.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry to hit you. I'm sorry to make
me a fucking dinosaur.
I mean, you already are a dinosaur. This is just like something extra. An extra badge of an extra badge for the sash.
Also, when Fuamoko came out, and I was like, "Is that Aya?" You were like, "Oh my gosh, I haven't thought about her in years."
Yeah. So. Wow, we spent like we spent more than an hour and a half talking about NIJISANJI and Hololive news that has happened in the last month only.
Okay, to be fair,
it's been a lot. There has been a lot, so yeah.
I'm a mistaken morning. I am excuse things.
Yeah. I guess like to go from here is like there's like a couple things that we can talk about. I'll just flag really quickly that like today, like as we're recording, it's IronMouse's 6th anniversary as a streamer, as a VTuber.
Talk about VTuber boomers.
Yeah. Like a full-on, like, I don't even know how long it is. I haven't looked it up yet. Like, there's like a full-length animation video made by Tonari Animation, which, if that name sounds familiar, that is the studio that James Banks guy got fired from before he went and made his own studio and fucked up a bunch of other VTubers. How long is it? IronMouse. Just give me her YouTube channel. Is it
okay, but like,
it's
the big thing that I want to point out is just the fact that we finally get a Boobie and Connor collab kind of thing.
Oh yeah, well they've got the collab song as well. Like they've IronMouse. Yeah. There's like the IronMouse and Boobie song which is releasing tonight sometime. But yeah, so there's a 6-minute animation video from Tonari, called IronMouse Unleashed. You can go and watch it. It actually kind of looks sick. I haven't. It went live a few hours ago. I've been out and about all morning, so I haven't been able to watch it. Oh, the song's out already. IronMouse Boobie song. Oh yeah, there you go.
Let's go.
It's out.
Everyone
now.
Go stream it.
There you go. You can. That'll be fun to watch. I'm just like I'm pulling up YouTube now, and I've just been reminded of like when Mousie's song "Stay With Me" at her birthday concert. You just had Boobie in the background, just fucking dropping the sick moves. Like he was
trying to.
Nah, he did fine. He did totally fine.
You're just trying to defend other English men with accents.
Yeah. Also on top of that, there is a teaser for what looks to be a VSHOJO concert.
Let's go.
With everyone involved. Like, everyone involved. I do like how Kaeson's in the middle of it, because that just seems entirely on brand. But yeah, just kind of all the graphics and stuff pointed towards it being like a potential concert or some sort of like major event. Which I guess is kind of the theme for VTubing this year, where there are these mega events. And I mean, like, Holo and Niji Fest have existed for some time, right? But in the West, we haven't had anything. And now that we've had Connect the World, we're going to have colors, but we don't have colors yet. Production Kawaii did their own concert. Forever Bloom, I think it was what it was called. And now we've got this VSHOJO event. It really is the year for like VTuber agencies to have like major events. And like not just like VTuber events, but like they have enough of a fandom where they can have solo shit go on and it be like a big thing. So that's kind of interesting to see. I'm interested to see what this project actually is. So yeah, we'll wait and see on that. I don't know how quickly do you want to breeze through like the small news bits before then we can share like a little reflection at the end.
Let's jump straight into the reflection because we can talk about the streamy wins when they happen.
Okay.
Because I'm banking on IRONMOUSE winning this year. If IRONMOUSE doesn't win, I swear to God.
Okay, so what I will do is I'll quickly breeze through these 3 news topics that I have across the top here, and then we can talk. We can do a little reflection. So, what also happened this month was the Streamies VTuber nominations got announced. 6 VTubers were nominated across 4 categories, including 3 VTubers twice. So 9 total VTuber nominations.
Let's go.
The Streamies last year were pretty heavily criticized because they, it was 4 VSHOJO VTubers plus Code Miko, and Code Miko ended up winning. And that just, both sides of that equation just dismantled the VTuber community, which I think was kind of rightfully so. But this year is actually very interesting because I was running it through my head. This is the first time a Hololive VTuber has ever been, Hololive EN VTuber has ever been nominated for an award.
Yeah. And
so it's Guru got nominated, which I mean, I guess. She still is technically the biggest VTuber they have by no small margin. But yeah, it's interesting. Like, IRONMOUSE is in there, obviously. Shoto is like the male rep, and I think a deserved male rep. The two interesting, well, the one very interesting one to me is Fillion. Fillion getting not just 1, but 2 nominations. Which I think is testament to how fast she's growing, because Fillion is a VTuber that's very easy to kind of forget. Has 2 million subs on YouTube as an indie. I think she is literally the biggest indie VTuber in the world. So yeah, like,
that sounds about right.
Yeah, and like her shorts went fucking viral, and like her clips have always gone viral. I think Fillion should have a massive shout out to Cooksey, because Cooksey really helped Fillion blow up, and Fillion ran with it and did a great job, and like has always done like some of the most unique content in EN VTubing. They're the one that is used to the 3D environment and VR chat to its biggest power. But yeah, like Fillion is easy to forget just how big Fillion is. And then Jaden Animation, who debuted as a VTuber in December last year, also got a VTuber nom. We said 6 VTubers. There's only 5 in the Best VTuber award, and that's because Shy Lily also got nominated as in the Breakout Streamer category. Because, I mean, she kind of is a breakout streamer. Maybe it's a year too late for the streamies, but Shy Lily across 2022 went from 10,000 followers at the start of the year to more than 1 million by the end of 2022. And has continued to grow since then. So there's a ton of VTuber nominations in those awards. You can't vote in these ones. These ones are like a panel vote only. So it'll be interesting to see where the panel kind of sits on. I personally don't see a VTuber. I personally don't see any of the other, like, a VTuber winning an award outside of the Best VTuber category. IRONMOUSE, who's also been nominated for Streamer of the Year, which is huge. First VTuber to ever been do so. At least for English speaking, because Salome did it last year for YouTube Japan Awards. That one's interesting. I don't think Fillion or Shy Lily are going to win Breakout Streamer. And Jaden Animation has a chance in Best Animated Content, but I'm interested to see where that lands. But yeah, it's cool just to see more VTubers are nominated in more categories that aren't just Best VTuber. Speaking of VTuber award shows, we spoke about the Small VTuber Awards in the last podcast, did an article about a month ago. They are happening next week. So for the next episode of Virtual Recap, we'll be talking about them a little bit more. And then VStream, whose production and development we have been following quite closely on our podcast, is now getting ready to launch its open beta. It launched in July. It's now open for everyone to sign up and stream on the platform. I'd be very interested to see the analytics of that in the short term. So maybe by the next time we have an episode, I can hit up VStream and we can get some stats. That is a very quick run through of all of the other news that we wanted to touch on, but didn't want to drag the stream on for too long. What I will do, I think the best way to, I don't know how you want to do this, Hannah, in terms of just like a little recap of what's happened so far this year. Oh my God, what can I put on the background here that's not going to get me banned on? Let's have a look. Yeah, well, it's my friend's birthday today. There you go. You can have a look at their birthday fit. We can bring up some stuff about Idol Showdown. There you go. We can just have this in the background. What is your assessment on like a recap so far of this year in VTubing?
Okay, so as much as people are like very doom and gloom, I think the number one big thing is definitely the fact that Hololive and NIJISANJI got together and decided to open up like competitive gaming to Western VTuber watchers. Because until now, it hasn't really been a big thing. And like, I say competitive gaming, but I think we all know that it's VSHOJO, right?
I think it's a little bit more than that now, because like the cover has opened up like horizontal.
Yeah. Horizontal is one of the things. It definitely came after that. Yes, Solen being invited to like every single Apex thing ever. Now, you have. I personally would pick like Axel as like my big VTuber breakout star this year, because just on a personal level. Because he brought VSHOJO to the English-speaking audience. He helped popularize Rust when there was a big Rust craze with the Japanese YouTubers. And then recently, he helped popularize that again when the GTA Japanese server was open for a couple of weeks. And you literally had people like Kuzo and Lauren bringing in 20, 30, 80,000 people.
Yeah, it was like, the streams were nearly pushing six figures, which rivals the figures that people like XQC would bring in during their own GTA RP streams.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you had all of those, like, the fact is that sort of narrative arc just never really happened in the EN space. You kind of had it in NIJISANJI for a little bit when everybody and their mother was like playing Minecraft.
Yeah.
But until then, it was always one-off games like Among Us or something. It wasn't something continuous like that.
Yeah, it was like WrestleSanji or something.
Yeah.
Or like people would get together for the Mario Kart tournament or Koshien and those kinds of things, right? But it was always one-off events. It wasn't like a continuous thing.
Yeah. And so to have that sort of thing finally break into the EN speaking space is definitely, probably for me, the main story of 2023. Just like gaming in general.
I think like it's just like an interesting development in terms of how VTubers are being used as marketing at events, like with like Valorant Masters JP, the tournament that happened, I want to say May or June this year, and there was VTubers abound at that event. I think Shibuya Ha was there, and a few other VTubers, and they played a very prominent part at one of the biggest esports events of the year, period. Not just like general like a VTuber event. It was like a esports tournament watched by millions, which is, I think, interesting. I think the story and like the one thing that I would want to recap on and focus on a lot this year is the kind of diversification of the tier 2 English agency space, where you've had 8 new debuts in Prison Project after more than 12 months without one. 2 years basically. Then you have Phase Invaders Phase 2, which, I mean, for as much as like I am not huge on Phase Connect, I feel like it's something still important to mention. You've had Idol EN2, you've had Idol Espanol now. You've got V Reverie, you've got VNU debuting new people. You have V Mirai, who kind of came onto the space as one of the Brave Group kind of expansions into the EN space. And they've done okay. So like the whole ecosystem underneath the quote-unquote big three has really blossomed this year. And there's been some really big breakout stars. Rin is probably the one that's on everyone's lips, but like you're looking right now and someone like Sherry from V Reverie has exploded in the last like week. And literally like tripled their YouTube subscribers off the back of like shorts content. Which is a very interesting thing in and of itself. And as a result of the tier 2 space doing well, it's bled into the indie space a little bit as well, where you're kind of mid-tier indies. So not your Shy Lilies, but kind of like your Vexorias, your Ellies.
Or Marinas.
Yeah. You're even like down to like your Marinas or your Dandy Flosses. Like your kind of 10K follower Twitch streamer has found a little bit more success this year. And that is despite some factors in terms of a decreasing portion of the pie, with rev share, with the tech winter, with everything. The space is still growing above all of that. So it does, once the kind of barriers are broken between the integration of VTubers in pop culture more broadly, whether that be conventions or esports or broader gaming concepts, it's going to increase the pie for the medium as a whole. And that's not built off just 200 talents across 3 agencies, right? That is built off the entire ecosystem as a whole. So to see tier 2 thriving is a very big, especially in the EN space, is a very big positive.
Yeah, and like I was kindly reminded by a friend the other day. Let's just say I'm super fucking jealous of Los Angeles right now because
I could never be jealous of LA, but like continue.
Okay. You're gonna be jealous after you hear this. So
the only thing about that I'm jealous about in LA is Anime Impulse right now. Like, cause that con looks fucking awesome. That's in LA, right? It's in Orange County.
Like, the lack of money is a real struggle, man, because fucking Gavis and Millie Parfait are gonna be at the same con, and I can't be there.
That sounds like a skill issue. Skill issue.
I'm so jealous. But yeah, at the end of Anime Expo, there was a survey going around being like, hey, you know, like, how would you guys like to see a physical location where you can enjoy VTuber lives? And I'm just like, don't fucking tell me you guys are gonna build out an actual VTuber studio, like theater, in Los Angeles. Fuck you!
I mean, I feel like
give something to the East Coast!
I mean, I guess. Give something to Australia, please.
What? No! America first!
We've never had a NIJISANJI VTuber guest at a fucking local convention. Please.
Sounds like a skill issue!
Give us someone. We've only had 2 agencies ever represented at a convention here, and it's not even NIJISANJI. It's Hololive, and it's Prism Project.
No, America first! America first!
America, the land of the free.
Yeah! Capitalism!
I feel like there'll be more like when I hear that kind of stuff, I think of like we have this bar in Australia called GG Easy, which is as the name would suggest, a gaming themed bar in Melbourne, and it's esports, like it's very esports heavy, esports focused, and they'll have like gaming themed drinks. They used to have gaming themed food there before the pandemic, and like it's like wall to wall esports. I want something like that, but for VTubers. I will give me the money. I will open up a VTuber cafe, and I will serve nice coffee, and I won't serve you shit, branded themed made cafe food. I will serve just regular food, but it will just be wall to wall VTuber streams.
Just utter chaos.
Yeah, but what would I call it? I haven't gone that far.
15 Kuzuhas just like screaming back to back.
Yeah, that's what you would want.
Yeah.
Chronoir.
Chronoir? No. I just want Kuzuha like getting tortured in the background, right?
Yeah.
Yes, do go to Anime Impulse.
Yeah, and honestly,
but actually go to both of the concerts because those concerts are gonna be fucking lit.
Anime Impulse seems like the place to be. Like, as a VTuber fan, like, Offkai is, like, great, and it does, like, attract, like, a same level of guests, but Anime Impulse seems wild for like, a VTuber con. Like, they've really nailed back-to-back years now, because Anime Impulse last year was big for VTubers, and it's even bigger this year.
Okay, but, like, honestly, it's kind of funny that they keep on outing their one, intern. We call her the legendary Kiyomi intern. So for those of you who don't know, basically the backstory of it is there was a girl who got into Luxium, and then when Luna debuted, she got really, really into Kyo. I think she was actually a Chronoir fan, like before that. She got her bosses into Luxium, and they were like, "Oh, like, do you think we can invite them to like, you know, our convention, because they hold a bunch of local conventions." They're like, yeah, we think we have some money for that. And that was Luxium, and it was so well attended that they actually needed to do the panel outside because they didn't have enough space indoors.
Yeah.
And that started it all.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess, like, to cap this off, like, it's been 6 months of this podcast, which, by the way, is fucking wild, and basically 9 months since we first spoke.
Yeah.
Which is also wild to think about.
Whoa.
How much more positive are you on VTubing now?
Okay, like, this year, Hanae got a McDonald's sponsorship, Mysta got a KFC sponsorship in probably KFC's largest market, and Kuzuha and Kanae are trying to sell me a Pixel Fold. So that is a very long-winded way of saying there is more money in this space than ever before.
Yeah.
Very positive.
Yeah.
Shall we say.
Yeah, I think there's the kind of activations that NIJISANJI has been doing, and Hololive as well. Hololive activations have also been going pretty hard. Is very testament to the kind of cultural influence they have in Japan, and I don't think it's going to be that long until they have a similar influence in different markets as well. So, like, as we keep saying in this on this podcast, the pie does increase. Even through the tech winter, it has gotten bigger and bigger. There is more and more collaborations going on, and the audience is still growing. So there's a lot to kind of look forward to, nevertheless, in the future. That's kind of my take on VTubing. I'm still really high on it. I think the medium has a lot of potential that's unrealized, even in its core audience. So we'll only discover more as time goes on.
Like, I feel like one last comment is there's a lot of negatives that we highlight week to week. Well, not week to week, like every other week-ish. But at the same time, I hope people don't lose the perspective that this is still, like, a really good space to be in. Because it's so easy to get lost in the negative narrative. Yeah. That people don't realize, like, there are really great things happening, and there's going to be more good things coming.
Yeah. Like, there's a lot to there's a lot, even among all of the disparate stuff, there's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah.
Even if your Oshi graduates, VTubing will move on.
It's okay. My other Oshi is making their Coachella debut, apparently.
Wait, really?
So aespa has a VTuber avatar.
Yep.
That was supposed to make their Coachella debut earlier this year, but I think it got pushed to later. So
Right.
yeah, they're actually going to be at Coachella, and New Jeans had their like Lollapalooza one,
Yep.
which I think they might have showed off their like Powerpuff Girls avatar on. If they haven't, that's definitely upcoming. So like, I haven't even talked about like the K-pop angle to all this.
Mm.
And that is another like really, really big story to come. So more things to look out.
We have spoken about it previously on previous episodes.
Mm-hmm,
When we spoke about Isugia. But yeah.
Yeah.